It all starts with education. When I was doing my dissertation, and both my dissertations actually, on my one on institutionalized racism, a lot of the issues we were seeing to do with stop and search and it being very biased and directed towards people of color, even though the majority of the time it was white men who were seen with drugs a lot more than black men, but black men were being stopped at a disproportionately high rate, still are. Um, I found that it was really just the internal unconscious biases they had. Um, and just like we wouldn't want to label those specific police officers as racist, we don't want to label people of color as criminals or drug dealers. So I think the education aspect, figuring out what your unconscious biases are, where did they come from, also taking the blame out of it. It's not your fault. You know, the media and the colonial history of England has made it very difficult for people to not be biased. Um, and I found a similar, in the similar vein, in my second dissertation on institutionalized misogyny. There was a really heartbreaking case on Sarah Abraham, I believe her name was, and she had a very brutal sexual assault, and her trauma was misidentified as lying. So every single piece of evidence she gave, whether it changed a little bit in her behavior, it was all dissected and understood to be, oh, she's lying, or you know, she's doing this for attention. But really, if the police officers or the investigators had more education on what trauma looks like and how women respond to sexual assault, it wouldn't have been seen that way. So I guess in terms of stopping further harm, um, is education, and also the root cause is also education, if that makes sense. It's Layla Abraham, not Sarah Abraham.
That's such a really good point, and maybe we'll sort of turn a corner into that because when you're telling your story and you're now in the field of the law, and everything that you say is being scrutinized or picked apart, and as you say, then we have to look at our unconscious biases, because it's not a scientific, it's not a scientific process. And yet the work I do with people when I'm using the dialogue roadmap, if I'm listening to someone's story in any setting whatsoever, where a person starts with how they present and what they want me to hear at the beginning invariably weaves in and out of all sorts of places and changes and morphs. And those people are not lying. They're not lying. They're going on a very human journey.
Exactly, and it's the same with memory as well. There is actually so much evidence to suggest that our memory is so malleable. It genuinely changes. There have also been studies where people are taken in and shown photos of them in a hot air balloon and said, "Oh, do you remember this being on a hot air balloon?" And at the beginning, they're like, "No, I've never went on a hot air balloon," and they never had. But then I think they bring in parents and they're like, "No, you did," blah, blah, blah. And at the end, they have this full memory of them being in a hot air
Mm.
balloon. So, I mean, the way that the criminal justice system, from the very beginning, from police interviews to being in court, um, I mean, your memories kind of will change and your attitudes and your feelings will change, and that is just human nature. But if we start to interpret that as people being malicious or lying, then we have a whole different perception of them.
And I think the point is that what you're really, bringing out to light is that it's very complex and that we're trying to use very black and white systems, very black and white, evidence based, sometimes balance of probability systems to do something that's very complex. Because clearly, we don't want somebody to have their freedom taken away or to be labelled who didn't do it. I mean, and there's a huge amount of that, a huge amount. I mean, I sit with a lot of innocence protesters. I'm not there to say what to believe or disbelieve somebody in the work I'm doing. So if I understand you, there's a lot of complexity here, and we need a lot more. Well, I think you said it, education. There needs to be, we need to never stop examining and educating ourselves as we learn more about neurodivergence, as we learn more about how people operate, what people are exposed to, what the general sort of echo chambers of our society are telling us, are bouncing back at us. All this has to be taken into account.